Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session on managing service investments for the professional services organization. My name is Julie Moore. When I was looking at the schedule of topics that were slated for this particular service catalog series of presentations today, I was kind of thinking about what could I do that would be a little bit different. We see a lot of stuff that talks about how to use the service catalog internally to an organization. And, you know, from time to time we might even see presentations for external service providers. But I thought it might be interesting to take a look at the way that a professional services organization can use the concepts that we talk about within ITIL on the service catalog. And so what I'm going to demonstrate to you today is actually the way that I had leveraged using the service catalog as a practice manager in a former job that I had, but also kind of showing you the way that this fits within the 2011 content coming out of ITIL, which is, has a little bit more of an extension of the service catalog and the view of the portfolio. So let's get started. For those of you who don't know me, I have been speaking now. I think my first presentation I did was back in 1999, and I talk about all different types of things from ITIL to COBIT to knowledge management. I kind of pride myself in being able to bring you information that you can use that's very actionable in your job. So I'm hoping that those of you who have joined me here today are from professional services organizations that might be able to use some of this information to expand the way that you view the service catalog in your organization. So welcome. And the agenda for this session today is to look at the need, why professional services are out there, what is the driving need within a customer environment, look at defining what is a professional services organization, and one of the most important things to a professional services organization is its resources. That's the subject matter experts that provide these services, and we'll talk a little bit about the resource model that's very important to the success of that organization. And then looking at the service catalog and the way that I view the service catalog within the professional services organization. This ability to repeat delivery of a certain level of intellectual property that you bring into a customer's environment and how we can market that through a service catalog. And then putting the whole thing together into a life cycle approach, a repeatable delivery of these services within the customer environment. So let's begin by talking about why customers need professional services. In today's environment, we're often forced within an IT organization to do more with less. Businesses are looking for more value from what the IT organization, the investments that we make within IT, but also what IT provides to the business. And many times we can't really define the value that we provide to the business, or we're not measuring it effectively. And this makes it very difficult for us to prove the value that we provide. And many times when we look at the driving factors within an information technology organization, we need to be able to transform the way that we do business to keep up with the changing pace of technology. How do we help manage costs in order to reduce the cost of delivering services to customers? The business is going through mergers and acquisitions, and we in IT have to be able to manage the change in infrastructure behind the scenes. So we see a lot of these driving factors that are driven from business change that really make it incredibly important for IT to be agile and to be able to change the way that we do business in order to serve the business's need. So oftentimes this lends itself to an IT organization needing the help of someone else to come in and help them figure out where the efficiencies can be gained, how to better manage resources, how to better deliver services, and, of course, service management is a very important part of that. So our customers need our help. As a professional services organization, we're there to help them overcome a lot of these challenges that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. So what is the professional services organization? Essentially, if we look at the 2011 edition of ITIL and we look at the service strategy book, one of the things that immediately jumps out at me is the 4 Ps of service strategy. The perspective is where we see ourselves as a service organization in relationship to the competitive landscape that we're working in. The position is where we are today in relationship to where we see ourselves. The plans are how we develop our offerings to get from where we are today to where we want to be within a given market space. And the patterns, this is the way that we can document and repeat what comes out of our plans, things that we are doing right, that we want to continue to do, and products and services that our customers are very happy with and are willing to buy, things that help them to transform their IT organization. So the professional service organization has a defined set of methodologies. We carefully hire experts within a particular domain of knowledge. We bring their expertise on board with a set of consultants that really have a collective level of knowledge and experience that produces, some sort of a value, meaning we're mind share, we're helping an organization to transform its IT organization by bringing in this subject matter expertise and helping them to define how they can get to where they need to go. The professional services organization does a lot of cross-training and cross-development, leveraging the experience of all the different experts that they hire in order to raise the collective intelligence. It's generally service-based. They have a lot of quality assurance built in the way that they deliver their services, which traditionally tends to be the competitive advantage that they have over others in the market space. It's really a sales cycle that manifests itself on long-term relationships with our customers. We come in with a wedge offering, we prove our value, and then we continue to listen to our customers and understand what it is that they need and begin to continue to bring in new services as those client needs are well defined. Brand recognition is incredibly important. And this can be driven in a lot of different ways, but many times it's driven just by the thought leadership of the people that form the professional services organization. Now, typically, we have a predefined set of customer offerings, things that we bring to the table that are repeatable, that would help us to, things that we've identified that are common that help to bridge the gap between where organizations are and where they aspire to be. So we need to be able to also, as well as define these offerings that will be a consistent part of our service catalog and are very repeatable, we also need to define a strategy that keeps us looking forward at the challenges that our customers are going to face in the future and define a strategy for how we'll expand our services for those customers to help meet their changing needs. So there are really 5 major components of the professional services organization. Our customers, right, our clients. We have to have a high value, high level of customer satisfaction, build long-term relationships, focusing on our clients' core business and what it is that drives their business and how we can help them to be more successful. Of course, our brand recognition is pretty important. If we have a significant brand that's out there in front of the professional services organization, it can often help to bring down the barrier for them to do business with us. If we don't have that recognized brand in the industry, we're often left to establish that credibility with our customers. But increasing it means getting the company name out there, getting our experts out there, whether it's through membership organizations like ITSMF or HDI or ISACA. It's getting articles published. It's, being able to come up with a very solid value proposition, the thing that we lead when we go into our customer environments with, in order to get their attention that we are the company that they would want to choose to do business with. Now, the methodologies and deliverables, that's the core of what we're selling. We're selling our intellectual property, the way in which we help an organization close the gaps that we can help them to identify. So we need to be able to build repeatable methodologies, wedge offerings, things that get our foot in the door with the customers, and then be able to, because change takes time, we can't necessarily come in and completely revolutionize the way that a customer does business, we have to kind of do this in a phased approach, looking at where they are today. And if you look at the CMMI maturity model, right, there's these logical progression. It's very difficult to move an organization from a 2 to a 5. So we come in, we help, we move them from a 2 to a 3. We allow stabilization to happen, and then we can help them move from a 3 to a 4. So often we're doing this where we're selling what we provide to the customers in a phased approach, something that helps to evolve our client organizations. So all of this goes into what we would have as a service portfolio, right? What do we offer? What's our experience? How can we customize what we provide to a customer by carefully selecting what a particular customer's weaknesses are and matching up what we can provide to those customers? And, of course, what's driving all of this is the need to drive revenue. The higher the margins, the lower the costs, the better we manage our resources, making certain they're engaged on the actual engagements themselves will help to increase the revenue. So when we look at what drives a professional services organization, it's really a balance of all 5 of these things. Now, this is kind of a combination of 2 things. What I've done is I've said, okay, ITIL has said that strategy is all about perspective, position, plans, and patterns. And yet, when you look at something like the Gartner Magic Quadrant, where they're evaluating, a series of companies in a particular market space, we kind of always see this, well, we have our leaders, our challengers, our niche players, and our visionaries. And so when we map something like that, something that looks at a competitive landscape and seeks to evaluate these competitors against one another, when we as a professional services organization look at that landscape, our perspective is where we see us, where we want to be in that competitive landscape. Our position is where we actually are today within that competitive landscape. And how we get from where we are, and you can see in this picture that we envision ourselves as being a leader, yet we're very much viewed by our customers or by the industry as being a niche player. So the plans, the things that we have to do are come to market with services, to come bear with the right resources, with the right intellectual property to move ourselves from the niche player to being a leader in that market space. So this is where our plans are instrumental in moving us from our position to our perspective. Now, what comes out of that? We begin to see we gain success with one customer, and then we get another customer, and we begin to, it's kind of like this snowball effect where we see that we're really striking the balance of the right message to our customers, getting them the right services that they need. We see successful outcomes. The best way to propel us from our position to our perspective is to really look at what we do, what's repeatable, what can we sell again, what can we deliver again, knowing that we've gained this success and we've achieved this success within a customer or more than one customer environment. That becomes the patterns. Those patterns naturally translate themselves to the service portfolio. Those are the things that can be repeatable, what we go to market with, what we sell to our customers. Now, as I stated earlier, the resources that we have for this are incredibly important. It's usually what distinguishes one professional services organization over another, the quality of the individuals that we hire, that we bring into a customer environment, and can often create the tipping point between not having any brand recognition, but having clients that really know that we provide value, and we've got those references. We can come to market with this intellectual property. So when we think about industry presence and thought leadership, we need to have people that are sought after, people that go to these conferences and they speak, they're subject matter experts in their field. We can be able to grab more market space within our professional services organization because we have these experts. Often if they're publishing articles or white papers or speaking or doing things like these webinars, they are then driving that brand presence, not only as a subject matter expert, but they're bringing the company's market and brand along with them. So it's a very important part of being successful are these resources. Now, typically we see that the professional services organization is broken down into individuals that will be managing multiple life cycle deliveries across many customers. So what that does is it provides consistency between one customer engagement and another, making certain that we're doing the right things, that we're tracking the profitability of one sales cycle to another through delivery, et cetera. The consultants are the subject matter experts that are then bringing to bear the intellectual property and the service offerings. They're actually delivering them and producing the value. They own the project, whereas the practice lead or the managers are really about owning the life cycle. So we have to have clear roles and responsibilities to ensure the success of the delivery from the service catalog. Now, individual accountability is very important in the professional services organization. They need to be driven by the desire to have high customer satisfaction, high margins, increasing profits, being able to support the sales cycle, because once we get into delivery, there are often opportunities where we will identify and uncover other areas of need within the customer environment, and it's our responsibility to get that information into the sales cycle so that we can go back to that customer with additional offerings, after we're done with delivery, in order to grow that customer and to cross-sell or upsell into the same customer. So they play a very important role in driving sales, both from a credibility perspective, but also from defining the need. Utilization is incredibly important. The more that you're on the bench and you're not engaged in a customer environment, the more you're bringing down the profit margins of the professional services organization. Branding, intellectual capital, and the capture of that intellectual capital is very important. And then being able to bring your subject matter expertise to that practice and be able to expand the service offerings and look for new ways to deliver these services, because you're there, you know the customer, you know the need, and you can see where maybe the service, the investments that you've made in services so far have gaps, things that are being driven by need within the customer environment that could very well become new offerings for the professional services organization. Now, it's important for us to incentivize this group of individuals, because very often they are very driven individuals that pride themselves on quality of work, but there's a standard that has to be upheld in order to make certain that we're coming to market, we can drive that brand recognition, we get these repeat customers. It's all about the reputation of the organization. So driving them to increase brand recognition, increase revenue, develop new customers, expand into existing customers, but also to contribute to intellectual property is part of ensuring that the resources are aligned with the professional services organization and that we're driven towards the success of the overall practice. So as I said, the capture of intellectual property is very important, but from the capture of intellectual property, meaning we're working with a customer, we're developing something uniquely for that customer. After this engagement is finished, we have to realize that what we have just produced could very easily become a new pattern. It could become either we're going to increase an existing methodology or deliverable that we have already on our portfolio, or it may be something new that we might want to add to our portfolio. So as part of capturing that intellectual property, we have to look at improving existing methodologies, standardizing, and then expanding the portfolio based upon the need that we've identified within a customer organization. Now, at the end of this project, it's important to bring sales back into the delivery part of it so that this end of project review can occur, so that not only can the sales identify the need, they're going to have to go out and sell this new product or service to other customers, so they need to understand the triggers, the drivers, the things that are indicating the purchase from a customer. So we bring the sales back into the professional services, wrap the project up, make sure that we capture that intellectual property, and identify if there are any new services that we could add to the portfolio. So let's take a look at the view of a service catalog now within this professional services organization. This is what we offer to our customers that represents the consistency and repeatability of professional services. Now, just like a service catalog might be for an internal organization, we would have the pipeline, the catalog, and retired services. The pipeline, these are the things that we see the customers are asking for that maybe aren't on our catalog, or as I suggested at the end of a project, we see that a customer's come up with a need, that we may be able to meet in the future and add to that catalog. The catalog, this is our core offerings. This is when we look at that professional services organization and we see the level of expertise of the people that form that organization, these are the things that we can feel very confident that we can bring to the table that would allow us to successfully serve the needs of our customers. Now, retired services, these are the things that we see that our customers are no longer really biting on, right? The things that are no longer the shiny gadget that, the flavor of the day that may very well represent something that has either become so embedded in an organization that it's no longer considered to be practical or needed. So we have to pay very close attention because we don't want to continue to go to market with services that are fit into this retired field because, again, it's something that we don't want to lead. Hey, we're experts in the industry. You don't want to go with a bunch of tired, old, retired services that customers aren't buying. You want the new, shiny stuff that gets the brand recognition and the attraction. But you never want to completely eliminate this because if you have a customer that's, let's say, at a very low end of maturity, these services may actually be very palatable to those customers, but they're not necessarily something that you're leading and going to market with. So, the professional services organization lends itself extremely well to these three sections of the portfolio. So here's an example of a service catalog, and I've modified this slightly from what I had when I was running the practice. But the pipeline, these are things that, if you look at today, what we're being driven by is cost consciousness. So maybe we didn't have anything for cost management in our catalog, and that was an oversight. But we can see that the industry is driven towards better management of costs. So in the pipeline, we may be looking to build services that will help customers manage costs, use data to support decision-making on making smart decisions on how to drive efficiencies and effectiveness. And, of course, project management might be something that would be very enticing to customers as bundling into not just cost management, but better resource management around what we're doing within the IT organization. Then we have our core services, the things that customers are constantly buying that we know we can go to market with that are very well defined. Here we see org structure, processes, assessment, technology implementation, customer management, revenue generation, things like that. Retired services, well, we haven't seen customers buy staffing. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but it's just not been something that they've been very interested in. So we kind of move and shift our professional services organization away from finding the right resource for our customer and just focusing in on the professional services. Or maybe implementation is no longer something that they want us to do. They want us to create the roadmap, but they want to do it themselves because they're in cost-sensitive times. Now, does that mean that no one will ever want staffing or implementation? Probably not. But it's a retired service. It's not something that we're putting a lot of time and effort into continuing to mature or to go to market with. So see how this lends itself very well to the professional services organization. So what is important is that we have to have a balance. What you don't want to show your client is a cookie-cutter approach to anything because they'll see right through that. They'll see, this looks like it hasn't really been customized to our environment. So the balance that we have to strike is to create repeatable offerings, yet those repeatable offerings have to be very adaptable to a customer environment. So how do we strike that balance? We have to really use the catalog effectively. To capitalize on a particular opportunity for a customer, we need to be able to leverage those service offerings, but package them in a way that meets the client's specific needs. So when we come up with a statement of work, we're listening very carefully to what our customers are telling us is the driving factors within their organization, and we say, okay, that means we have to address org structure, and that may mean that we need metrics. So we're essentially taking these repeatable service offerings, but we're packaging them in a unique way that addresses the needs of that particular customer. So that's one way that we adapt the way that we come to market with this set of services. So, for example, we may come up with a roadmap for our customer that's very consistent, which would say, here's what you need to do, here's the design time that it takes, here's what we're focused on achieving, improving your org structure, improving your customer relationship, and helping to improve staff. But what we put into it, this is the unique combination of services that meet their specific needs. The design time, the implementation time, these are all pretty consistent because we've done this before. We can predict, well, it takes us about 2 weeks to do this, and we have templates that get us started, so we're not starting from scratch every time we do this. And then the way that we structure our recommendations into the short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals for the organization, that's also very customized to meet that client's unique needs. So whereas we have our repeatable patterns, the way that we combine these, both what we choose and how we package them together is what helps to create a custom solution for our particular customer. So it all begins with, in order to do this effectively, we have to understand the customer need. And there are really two ways to understand the customer need. And it really just depends on your customer and their willingness for how much they'll pay for. So, for example, you can go in and continue to foster a relationship with a customer over a long period of time. And over that period of time, you discover all this information. Maybe sometimes they buy some smaller services from you, but they haven't really purchased anything that, is anything significant. What ends up happening is you're absorbing the cost of that discovery. And until you get to a certain amount of discovery where you fully understand the need of the customer, it's very unlikely that you're going to match your offerings to that customer need. This is generally much more time-consuming and more costly to the professional services organization, but we can foster a customer to the point where they're going to buy our services by doing this. And you just have to understand the customer and their environment to know which method would be better. But the quickest way to get in the door is to actually offer as one of your offerings an assessment, something where you come in and you spend time to get to know your customer, and that will give you the insight to develop that very customized solution for that customer. But that requires a very good wedge offering. So as part of your catalog, you have to have something that gets your foot in the door. It's the low-cost way of getting to know your customer, and that enables you to begin a successful relationship where you are identifying the needs of that customer and able to match your offerings to that customer. So if you look at something like an assessment, a wedge offering, this is also a highly repeatable process. This is what keeps your costs down during the discovery so that you can go into your customer environment and package this very cheaply, but at the same time give you the information that's necessary to begin to formulate a long-term relationship and to really know and understand what services are going to be appropriate for your customer. So we had a wedge offering that we could fit into 5 days. It had 2 days of discovery, a day also of observation, some interviews, very selective interviews with very defined questions that we would ask, with another day of developing the findings, and then production of the final results on day 5. This became one of our most popular offerings because the roadmap that we provided on day 5 was valuable. The customers got a value out of that. If they decided to implement these things on their own, they could easily use that as a guideline. But it also proved our value. It was succinct. It was low cost, and the customers didn't spend all of their money on finding out what their issues were. Now they have budget left over to actually engage us to do some of the work. So it became a very popular way for us to gain more knowledge about the customer environment, show them that we know what we're doing, prove our value, and then we were more able to get a successful purchasing of our additional services. It had an extremely well-defined process flow. This was not something that was left to chance. To get it done in 5 days, to save money and to price it very low, we had things that we sent to the customer's environment before we got there. We had to have an interview schedule created before we got there. That confirmed that the client was ready before we arrived. Then once we got there, boom, 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 we went through everything. And then, of course, we delivered our results. And then we would follow up with the sales staff immediately afterwards to make sure that we transferred all the knowledge about what we could sell to the organization going forward. This type of offering is only going to work as much as it is valuable for the customer. You don't want to over-deliver, but at the same time, you have this opportunity to prove your value to the customer. So we created a roadmap that would basically tell them, these are the weaknesses that we found. This is the way in which, this is the low-hanging fruit. This is the midterm things that you need to focus on. And then once you've done those two things, then you can start thinking about some of these long-term benefits that you'll get by adopting some of the recommendations that we have. One-page summary. We didn't go into a tremendous amount of detail of how you do it, because obviously that's what we wanted them to engage us to do, but at the same time, it was a confirmation when we sat down with that customer and told them these are the things that we found. A lot of times you'd see, oh yeah, that's right, yeah, we really do need to do that. There was a lot of buy-in from the customer that within a very short period of time we could understand their environment and help them, which was exactly what the wedge offering was designed to do. And this is, again, when we talk about customized, we don't want to see cookie cutter. That's the first thing that will turn a customer off, and you'll often hear, we're different. We're different than even like organizations because we do things this way. So it's important that you acknowledge the fact that they are different, that they're at a different level of maturity, that a standard approach isn't always the best approach. It's one that's customized for them. So what we pick from the deliverable perspective is unique to that customer, to their needs. The implementation time, that was consistent because we had repeatable ways in which to engage on these deliverables. But then how we package that together into the short, medium, and long-term goals were always going to be a customized approach for that particular customer. And this really impressed them, that not only could we help them with some of these things that needed to happen in the short term, but that we understood how to get to their long-term goals as an organization. So behind all of this, right, we have our service catalog, we have our incredibly talented resources, and we understand that part of this is coming up with the ability to be repeatable, to have brand recognition and all of that. We have all the core elements. But we can't step outside of the service life cycle for very long. We have to have a life cycle approach to the way that we engage our customers. And I've kind of talked a little bit about this, about how, the salesperson comes in, they begin building the relationship, we bring in the delivery organization to uncover the need, deliver value, come back and wrap it back up with sales. And that's exactly what we want. We need a life cycle approach, a repeatable way of delivering these services from sales through delivery and back to the sales organization after the delivery is completed. So when we think about patterns, right, we want this full life cycle approach from sales to delivery, including continuous improvement, where we're sitting down, what could we have done better, getting the customer satisfaction feedback back and embedding it back into our process so that we as an organization are, in essence, living our own philosophy. If we're telling our customers they need to do this, we should be able to demonstrate that we have a continuous improvement initiative within our own organization. Again, the life cycle approach is important for repeatability, scalability, consistency. Traditionally, this approach will be developed through years of experience. You may start off a little bit rocky, but if you do embed continuous improvement, you'd be surprised how quickly the patterns evolve and the ability to bring to market these services that are very well defined and exceptionally good. You have to focus on the intellectual property. Knowledge management is as important to the service life cycle as it is to the sales life cycle, right? And again, all the functional groups have to work together. So instead of thinking about networking, working with the service desk, it's sales, working with the people that write the statements of work and working with the people that are going to be the implementation managers and the consultants that will design things. This is cross-functional groups in a sales cycle that have to work together to ensure that we own that customer, that we have a consistent message to that customer, and that we really look like we are a professional services organization to them. For them to have confidence that we can help them overcome these things, we have to have overcome the barriers within our own professional services organization in order to go to market with that best practice advice. So selling services is very different. It requires different skill sets. We often had salespeople that we hired that were much more transactional sales in nature, where the person who had the discretion to buy the service was much lower in the organizational structure, and they did not move over to solution selling very well. It requires a much longer sales cycle, much better ability to negotiate, because it's not just a transactional cost, it's a long-term investment that your customers are making. So being able to weigh value for cost is incredibly important. It's a lot more about client management. Reputation and relationship are very, very important. Remember, we're selling vague things, best practices to a customer versus a product which is very tangible. And when you buy a product, you can go and look at product reviews. It's a lot easier to compare and contrast. But with best practices, it's all about the people that you put in front of the customer having the credibility to get the customer to understand that this is the service that the provider that they want to buy these services from. We're selling strategic versus tactical, which is another very significant difference. So this requires the sales staff to have a mastery of the services that are in the portfolio. They have to understand them because they are going to be part of helping to match the appropriate services to the customer's need. If they don't understand what we offer fundamentally, they're going to lose credibility very quickly with the customer. So we have to, as a professional services organization, either be part of the sales team or very heavily cross-train into the sales organization to help them be successful in managing that customer relationship. They have to be able to understand how to articulate the value proposition, and it really is a team approach to selling versus an individual. So what we want to do from the professional services organization is actually take that service catalog and create samples of deliverables, overviews of the services, case studies, package it into some ability for the salesperson to be able to take this on the road and be able to bring it to market. It really requires them to have quite a bit of confidence in the way that they can sell this. A lot of times establishing quotas will be something that will help incentivize the sales staff, but you can actually put quotas on the consulting staff as well for their assistance during the sales cycle, because a lot of times getting the subject matter expert in front of the customer is all it takes to get the customer to buy. Education, to help them understand how to sell the services, how to understand the need, the drivers within the customer environment, and then managing that pipeline of opportunities, because, again, these are longer sales cycles than you would see traditionally. So for each service in that catalog, we need overviews, data sheets, white papers, success stories, sell tips, buying signals, target customers. This needs to be part of the portfolio. And, again, who's going to understand this? It's going to be the consultant. The consultant knows what services to give to what customer based upon the need. So they need to enable the sales staff to better understand the drivers behind that need. We can develop sample presentations, come up with templates for statements of work and pricing. These are things that will help us to be much more successful in engaging those customers. So essentially we're taking these repeatable patterns and we're helping to apply them. I mean, we know how to create these repeatable patterns. Sales staff are not necessarily incentivized to do these things, so we can actually help them to be much more successful, enabling them to really go to market and feel confident in what they're selling our customers. Now, lead generation is interesting for a professional services organization. We think it only comes from the account managers, but it's going to come from so many different mechanisms. So existing accounts, when we do really well, we can upsell, cross-sell, resell. It comes from personal contacts. Professional services is all about personal contacts. You can take a smaller account and really treat it as as you begin to mentor this, really grow it into a much more substantial business-client relationship. But then as you learn more about that customer, that enables you to go now out to a vertical market. If it's higher education, the more you know about higher education, you can then be able to go out to that market because you understand the customer and their needs. So we're able to drive more leads by going after a particular market based upon success that we've had. Of course, we know websites, but speaking engagement, trade shows, partnerships, and, of course, what we think about traditionally as the sales activity, which is the cold calling and getting in front of the customer. We need to have a multi-channel approach that develops these relationships across all the different types of lead generation that we get. Again, helping us to develop smaller customers and develop them into larger customers as they mature, because we might sell something to them at the very beginning that would be a roadmap for a level 1 or 2 organization, but as they begin to mature, then they get more complex problems, and now they need consistent delivery mechanisms because they're no longer scalable, having grown from a small company. So these are relationships that we can evolve over time and begin to package and bundle different services. It's kind of selling through developing a partnership, a long-term partnership with our customer. So getting in the door, again, the wedge offering, the quicker we can get a customer to understand the value of our services, the better. We need to have those. And then what we produce as an outcome of that wedge offering, breaking down what the customer needs from that point forward, is a natural extension into the sales cycle. So we can turn around and come back a week or two later with a statement of work that helps with hey, here's your low-hanging fruit. We know how to help you with that. Here's what we can do to help you, and this is how much it's going to cost. And again, working with the sales cycle, coming back and targeting exactly what they need right now. And then if we're successful in engaging with them, we know what the natural extension of that will be phase 2. So it kind of naturally lends itself to the sales cycle once we develop the customer's roadmap. Now, again, because of the large the length of time of the sales cycle, it's important to remember that this is going to take a lot of mentoring of customers over time. We have to be able to mentor these relationships, mentor the handoffs between sales and delivery and back to sales again, and be able to manage these customers collectively as a professional services organization. So I wanted to make sure that I had time to answer the questions. The rest of this stuff is just talking a little bit more about the sales approach and the phased approach and the delivery and how we match up with sales. But I do see that I have a question here, and I want to make certain that I have an opportunity to address that question. Can we get a copy of these slides? Wow, that one was really easy. I hope that the rest of you have them so easy. Absolutely. I tried to do it beforehand, but if you don't do it 15 minutes ahead of time, it won't upload. So as soon as I'm done today, I promise I will put it up there. Not a problem. Okay, so we've only got about 2 minutes left, and I want to wrap up and talk about the overall philosophy here for the managed services organization. First of all, there is a great need in the industry for professional services. There's no doubt that when we look at service management, this is a difficult and complex framework, and there is a substantial amount of growth for our customers to start off, just simply looking at processes and improving processes, but then evolving into full service management organizations. So as a professional services organization, what we have to do is focus on developing that perspective, position, plan, and pattern, get the right services, get the right resources, figure out what is repeatable, and then adapt by matching the offerings to what the customer needs. And then if there's one person that should know how to use this information, it's us. So we have to have consistency in the way that we deliver. We have to have a level of professionalism that speaks and bodes confidence for our customers so that we can not only ensure their success, but, that all it will do is increase our reputation in the industry. So we only have about a minute left here. I know that I can usually squeak in a couple extra minutes if there's any additional questions. I don't see any that have been raised. But if you're like the world's fastest typer, you can pose a question real quick and I can get it before we finish up. Okay. Well, if you would like to get a hold of me, you can find my company out there, mindtheitgap.com. And here's all of my social networking connection points. Pick your favorite and send me an email. I have no problems with connecting and sharing more information and talking with you more about how to develop your professional services organization. I will put that PowerPoint presentation up right after the presentation so that you can download it. Any questions? Don't forget to do the rating afterwards. I've kind of looked at the service catalog this time a little bit differently than I would normally. Typically, I talk about, how to leverage it internally, but I thought it might make an interesting presentation to talk about how this is used as an external organization, and in particular in professional services. So I really want to know your feedback and understand that this was valuable to you guys. Okay. Well, that's it for today, you quiet bunch. I have 34 people out there and only one question. You guys let me off way too easy. Well, I hope to see you again in another summit. I know that from time to time, Bright Talk will come and tap me on the shoulder and ask me if I've got something to add. So hopefully I'll see you again in a presentation sometime soon. If not, if you go up to mindtheitgap.com, you can see the plethora of presentations I've done for Bright Talk in the past. They're all up on the website, but I have them also linked on my website in case you're interested in hearing anything more from me. Have a absolutely wonderful afternoon, and I just have to take this moment to tell everybody to have a wonderful holiday season and best wishes for all of you for a wonderful new year. Have a great afternoon, and thank you so much for attending.